Close your eyes and picture a brand new soccer ball. The skin feels smooth and slightly grippy under your fingers. Press your thumb into it and it pushes right back, firm and full of life. And that smell, that clean, sharp scent of fresh rubber and glue, every player on Earth knows it by heart. Now, here's the wild part. The factory you're about to walk through can turn out more than 100,000 balls in a single week. In the next 20 minutes, you'll discover the hidden layer under the skin that most players never know exists. You'll meet a robot whose only job is to kick one ball 2,000 times in a row. And near the end of this video, you'll find out what happens to the balls that fail inspection, because they don't end up where you think. But first, if you enjoy seeing how everyday things are really made, grab that like button, pump it full of air until it's perfectly round, and fire it straight into the kicking robot for me. Don't worry, it can take the hit. And if you love finding out how the stuff in your closet and your garage actually gets built, this is your home now, so make sure you're subscribed. Alright, back to the factory. Every soccer ball starts its life completely flat. At the loading dock, trucks deliver giant rolls of white woven fabric, each one taller than a person. The rolls are fed into a coating machine that spreads liquid plastic across the fabric in a thin, even film. This plastic is called polyurethane, and it's the same tough material used on the soles of running shoes. The coated fabric glides through a long drying oven, and when it comes out the other side, it's transformed. It's glossy, flexible, and strong enough to survive thousands of kicks. But it's not done yet. The material now passes between heavy steel rollers, carved with thousands of tiny dimples. The rollers press that texture deep into the surface. Those dimples aren't decoration. They work just like the dimples on a golf ball. They grab the air as the ball spins and help it fly straighter and faster. One finished roll of this material stretches more than 300 feet, enough skin to cover around 2,000 soccer balls. Still, this shiny material is only the face of the ball. Meanwhile, on the other side of the factory, workers are building the part you'll never see, the part that does all the real work. This is where the bladder is born, the balloon hiding inside every soccer ball. It starts as soft black sheets of a special rubber called butyl, a material famous for one talent. Air has a very hard time escaping through it. Machines cut the sheets into small pieces, and a worker presses a valve into the center of each one. That little valve is the only doorway air will ever have into this ball. The rubber is folded around a form and placed inside a round mold, which clamps shut and heats to around 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside that heat, the rubber pieces melt into each other and become one seamless balloon. But here's the catch. If there's a pinhole anywhere in that bladder, even one smaller than a grain of sand, the finished ball will slowly go soft and die on a store shelf. So every single bladder gets inflated and left sitting on a rack for a full 24 hours. Workers come back the next day and check each one. Any bladder that lost pressure is pulled from the line instantly. The survivors can hold their air for weeks at a time, yet before this balloon can become a ball, it needs armor wrapped around it. And to understand why, you have to travel back more than 150 years, because the very first soccer balls weren't made in factories at all. They were pig bladders. Players would inflate the bladder of a pig by blowing into it with their own mouths, tie it off, and kick it until it burst. The balls were lumpy, wobbly, and no two bounced the same way. Then in 1855, an American inventor named Charles Goodyear changed everything. He had discovered how to cook rubber with sulfur to make it strong and springy, and he used that trick to build the first rubber soccer ball in history. For the next 100 years, balls were heavy leather, things laced up like boots. When it rained, the leather drank the water and the ball could double in weight. Heading one felt like heading a brick. Then, in the 1960s, a new design took over the world. 32 panels, 20 hexagons, and 12 pentagons, stitched into a shape so close to a perfect sphere that it became the symbol of the sport. It was colored black and white for one simple reason, so viewers could see it spin on black and white television sets. But back on the factory floor, those rolls of dimpled skin are about to meet a machine with absolutely no patience. It's a hydraulic cutting press, and it slams down with a force of more than 100 tons. Workers slide the sheets of finished material under sharp steel dies, shaped like the panels of a ball, and the press punches them out like a giant cookie cutter. One machine can stamp out around 1,000 panels every single hour. Each panel must be flawless. A nick on one edge, a scratch in the coating, and it's gone. From there, the panels ride into the printing department, and this is where the factory holds its breath. The colors and logos you see on a ball aren't applied all at once. They're built up one layer of ink at a time, and every layer has to line up with the one before it within the width of a human hair. However, if a single panel shifts even slightly between layers, the design smears and the whole panel is scrapped on the spot. Once printed, the panels pass under powerful ultraviolet lamps that cure the ink rock hard in just a few seconds. And while those fresh panels cool down, in another part of the building, machines are preparing the secret I promised you at the start. Because if you flipped one of these finished panels over, you'd find something most players have no idea exists. Glued to the back of every panel is a sandwich of hidden layers. First comes a sheet of soft foam, about 1/10 of an inch thick. This foam is the reason a good ball feels gentle on your foot instead of hard like a rock. Behind the foam come layers of tightly woven fabric, and this is the true skeleton of the ball. Without it, the rubber bladder would stretch the skin out of shape with every kick, and within a week, your perfect sphere would look like an egg. The gluing here is a balancing act. Too little glue and the layers peel apart inside the ball. Too much and the ball turns heavy and dead. Some premium match balls hide as many as 5 separate layers under that shiny skin. That quiet sandwich of foam and fabric is the hidden layer that does all the real work, and you'll never see it unless you cut a ball open. And speaking of balls behaving badly, here's a story that proves how much all of this matters. At the very first World Cup final in 1930, Argentina faced Uruguay, and the two teams could not agree on whose ball to use. Back then, every ball was stitched by hand, and every ball played differently. So they made a deal. The first half would be played with the Argentine ball, and the second half with the Uruguayan ball. With their own ball, Argentina went into halftime leading 2-1. Then the balls were swapped. Uruguay scored 3 goals in the second half and won the World Cup 4-2. Same players, same field, different ball, completely different game. That's exactly why this factory obsesses over every single step. And right now, back on the floor, the bladder, the skeleton, and the printed panels are all finished, and every one of them is heading toward the same room. This is the assembly hall, and it's noticeably warmer in here because heat is about to replace the needle and thread forever. Workers place the printed panels face down into a gleaming steel mold shaped like half a ball, fitting them together like the pieces of a puzzle. The bladder, already dressed in its layers of foam and fabric, is set gently in the center. Then, the second half of the mold swings down and locks shut. Inside, the temperature climbs to around 212 degrees Fahrenheit, while the mold squeezes the ball from every direction at once. That heat melts a thin film of glue on the back of every panel, and the edges of the panels fuse into each other until they become one single skin. No needle, no thread, not one single stitch. And that detail matters more than you'd think. A traditional hand-stitched ball holds more than 640 stitches, and every stitch hole is a tiny open door for water. A thermally bonded ball has 0 holes. That's why modern balls stay light in the rain while old leather balls turned into cannonballs. After about 3 minutes, the mold hisses open and out comes something beautiful. A warm, seamless, perfect-looking sphere. A worker slips a needle into the valve and inflates it for the very first time, and just like that, all those flat sheets and black rubber scraps have become a soccer ball. But looking round and being round are two very different things, and the next room exists to find out the truth. Welcome to the testing lab, the most brutal place in the building. First, each ball is placed inside a laser scanner that measures its shape at thousands of points around the surface. To pass, the ball isn't allowed to vary from a perfect sphere by more than about 1.5%. The tape measure comes out too. The circumference must land between 27 and 28 inches, and the weight must sit between 14 and 16 ounces. Next comes the drop test. The ball falls from about 6.5 feet onto a steel plate over and over, and it must bounce back to nearly the same height every single time. Then it gets dunked in a tank of water and squeezed 250 times while fully underwater. Afterward, it's weighed again, and if it drank too much water, it fails. And then, at the end of the room, stands the machine I promised you. A robotic steel leg bolted to the floor with one job and no mercy. It fires the ball against a steel wall at 50 miles per hour 2,000 times in a row without a single break. That's more punishment than most balls see in 2 full seasons of practice compressed into one afternoon. When it's over, the ball is scanned and weighed all over again. If it changed shape, leaked air, or split a seam, alarms go off and the entire batch gets pulled for inspection. So what about the balls that fail? Here's the answer I teased at the very beginning, and no, they don't get tossed in a dumpster. Each failed ball is deflated, sliced open, and fed into a shredding machine that grinds it into soft rubber crumbs. Those crumbs are then melted and pressed into a brand new product, the springy, bouncy flooring used in playgrounds and running tracks. So somewhere out there right now, kids are running and jumping on the balls that didn't make the cut. Even the failures get to play. The winners get the royal treatment. Each ball is wiped down, partly deflated so it ships flat and tight, and sealed in its box. The boxes are stacked by the hundreds into shipping containers, and within a few weeks, these balls will be sitting on store shelves on every continent on Earth, waiting for a foot to find them. Before you go, here's a little souvenir to take with you. Next time you pick up a soccer ball, run your fingers slowly along the seams. If you can feel raised thread, human hands stitched that ball one hole at a time. If the seams are smooth and sealed, it was baked together with heat and pressure, exactly like the ones you watched today. So tell me in the comments, when was the last time you actually went outside and kicked a soccer ball around? I read every answer. And if you enjoyed this one, there's another video on your screen right now showing how another everyday thing is really made. You'll never look at it the same way again. Thanks for watching.